Let's go. All right. Today is March 26, 2019, and my name is Ronnie Austin, and my partner's name is Jacob Wright, and we're interviewing Miss Kay Hampton today. We're in CCGA in Brunswick, Georgia, and we're conducting an interview as part of this project to record the history of the College of Coastal Georgia. We'll start by asking you, what is your full name?
Kay Hampton.
Where were you born? How you grew up? What was your childhood like when you were growing up? How was your community during that time?
Okay. I was born in Tampa, Florida. Grew up in a very small town about 100 miles south of Tampa called Wachula. It was in a rural county, only about 6,000 residents in the county.
Okay. Has there any experience during your time there, during that period, changed you during that time growing up, or anything you remember during that time down there?
Oh yeah, lots of things. Well, growing up in a small community, like even smaller than the Brunswick area, and back in the 60s, when mostly I was little before that, but in the 60s, we had one high school, and most social activities at that time either occurred around your school or your church. Typical small town. Very supportive of whatever activities was going on in the school. At that time, however, there were very few of my graduating class who went to college.
Gotcha.
It was typically for females. You were either a nurse or a secretary or a teacher. Those were your three choices. And of course, today, females have essentially the same opportunities as everyone else. But during the growing up time is when my parents taught me values about character and those kinds of things, which did and continues to have a big impact on my life, both professionally and personally.
What did you do prior to working in college, Coach? So what is it like growing up in Tampa to all the way before coming here into Georgia?
Well, I did become a nurse. That was one of the three choices. So
right.
I picked one.
Right.
Actually, it had been my always what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, my parents said, you need to have a plan B. Neither of my parents went to school after the 8th grade, which was very common back then. But they were insistent on that my sister and I got a chance to further our education. And I said, there is no plan B, I have to be a nurse.
Right.
And so I was able to go to nursing school. And again, in the 60s, nurses were typically educated in hospitals, not in colleges.
Wow.
So I spent 3 years in Orlando at a very large hospital that had a school of nursing. And completed that, became a registered nurse, worked in the Orlando area for a year. And then I had my first boyfriend from high school was in the military, in the Air Force, and he came home after Vietnam, and we got married. Lived in Lake City, Florida for a little over a year, where I worked as a nurse, and he started to college because he had not gone to college prior to going in the military. And then we moved to Georgia, to Athens, for him to go to the University of Georgia. And I can sequence several other things after that. Then we moved back to Gainesville, Florida, after a couple of years, had a baby. He finished his degree in criminal justice at the University of Florida. And during the time we were there 5 years, I worked in Shands Hospital for University of Florida. Saw a lot of changes happening in nursing, where most of the registered nurses who became any kind of manager had a bachelor's degree, and I did not. And again, this was my long-term commitment, and so I returned to college and got a lot of first 2 years, our general education courses, got that out of the way, and then we moved to Albany, where I completed a bachelor's degree at Georgia Southwestern.
Okay.
Now, the first 10 years my husband and I were married, one or the other of us was in school all the time. So then we moved back to Athens, where he got a master's degree. And all of those interval times, I was working as a nurse. Then he became a federal agent, and we got moved to Rome, Georgia.
Wow.
We lived there for about almost 12 years. And again, I continued my work as a nurse there, although I became the assistant director of nursing. And then all the time, our daughter's growing up, and in 1990, he got transferred to FLETC, where he taught at FLETC for several years, and that's when I came to the college. So prior to that time, I had always worked what we call practicing nursing, and I was always in a hospital setting.
Gotcha. And that's something.
So we came here, and, well, you want to ask me some questions
you keep
about
going,
coming
ma'am.
here.
You go right
You
ahead.
go right ahead, ma'am.
So we came here, and since I'd been in the hospital for so many years by that time, I thought, well, I might want to do something different. Always related to nursing.
Right.
So I came out to the college. They had a position for part-time faculty.
Right.
And at the same time, I was working on my master's degree. And so I took the part-time position, taking students to the clinical settings. And then the following year, I started here full-time and completed my master's, started here full-time as a nursing faculty member.
Gotcha.
So that's how I got here.
Wow.
All right. When did you begin working at College of Coastal Georgia?
1990, yeah.
1990. What is your position with College of Coastal Georgia?
You want to know my position when I started or when I left?
Oh, well, I guess when you started.
Yeah, remember, I was here 25 years.
Right.
25 plus, so
Right.
I had several different positions.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Yes, I was nursing faculty when I first came.
What were your duties here at College of Coastal Georgia? What was like your normal day life when you were here teaching at College of Coastal
Teaching?
Georgia?
Well, in nursing, when a student starts in the nursing program, you have those students for a full 2 years. And so at that time, now remember also at that time, this was a 2-year college.
Right.
And so we had an associate degree in nursing program. So in nursing, we taught typically the whole class. Like if we took 60 students, if the class I was teaching, let's just say, was maternity, then all 60 of them were in that class.
Okay.
And again, in nursing, you have, you may only have 4 hours of class a week, but they go to the hospital then for another 16 hours.
Wow.
It's changed some now, but at that time, that's typically what it was, because the only course, by the time they get in the nursing program, the only course they were taking was nursing. And it was like a 9-credit class.
Wow.
and so they had the class, and then some lab
Right.
before you send them out to take care of patients. So you taught in the classroom, and you took them to the clinical setting.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, as with any college faculty, we were on college committees, various and sundry kind of college committees.
Gotcha.
How did your role change over the years? Like when it started, did any change, or you kept the same role while you were here?
No, I had many roles. So I started in 90. In 93, I was promoted to the division chair. Well, we had a new president come in 91, and so by 93, she'd been here long enough. She wanted to make some changes in just how we operated, the administrative structure. And so she formed a division of allied health and nursing. And so I was selected for that position. So in that position, I managed nursing, surgical technology. At that time, we had an LPN program, we had a clinical laboratory program, and we had back then you called it X-ray, now it's radiology. So I was overall responsible for all of those programs, but each one of them then had a manager or a director for each program.
Oh, wow.
How was campus like during your time? How did it look? Like in the 90s, how was it there to like when you left?
Oh my goodness. Well, we had this building, we had the Jones building, and we had Academic Commons South. The administration building was there. No Nunnally Health and Science building. The library was there. Andrews, or financial aid and all that is now. There was no student center. Well, actually, Andrews was the student center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And
little.
Right.
But remember, we probably had, during the 90s, 15 to 1,800 students, all commuters.
Wow.
So no dorms. So we didn't have a student center like this because we had no food service. We at one time in the Andrews Center there was a little cafe type thing where you could get like a grilled cheese or that sort of thing. But everybody was a commuter, so typically you came to class and then you left. So student activities were very difficult to really get anything going in because the students didn't stay on campus much.
Right.
But the gym was there, and the what's now the Student Center, or the SAC,
Gotcha.
was there. Not in their present state, because when we converted, and I can go through the years before the conversion, but when we converted to a 4-year institution, many changes occurred. So the new buildings are Nunnally. Of course, the library expansion that's occurring now. The Student Center, both dorms. And then everything, all the other buildings have been renovated. Like nursing was in this building at one time, and our laboratories were upstairs. In fact, this was called the Allied Health Building during those years. Jones has always been, it was always been the Jones Building. We called it the Science Building because that was primarily where the science classes were taught. And then Academic Commons South was the academic building because that's where most of the general ed type courses were taught.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
That's good. Just imagine this small used to be just a.
But the question you asked me about activities, we did have a men's basketball team and we had a women's softball team. and that really was about it as far as sports.
Mm-hmm.
We had a Dr. Umphris, the student, the vice president for student affairs,
Right.
but just the kinds of activities. There were a few clubs, but nothing like the expanse of clubs and activities like the homecoming and all the different things that actually occur on campus now. There was hardly any of that.
Wow.
Do you remember some of the clubs?
Since I was mostly involved in health at that time,
Mm-hmm.
all the health programs had a club for their students, but it wasn't a campus-wide oriented club. But
Right.
there was still student, well, you don't call it student council. What do you call your student government? Student government.
I think I'm there you go.
Student government. We didn't really have that, and we didn't have senators and those kinds of things.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Well, do you remember any landmarks that you particularly remember, like were just in the 90s that came out in the 90s, or just when you got here they were already up during that time?
You mean like landmarks on the campus?
Yeah.
Well, the bell tower, there was out in what y'all call the quad now,
Mm-hmm.
there was a big bell in a tower.
Mm-hmm.
And, you met at the bell tower. So to speak, students say, well, I'll meet you at the bell tower after class, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But as far as big landmarks, other than, our buildings and things, not really.
Mm-hmm.
Where the mall is now
Mm-hmm.
was a parking lot.
Oh, okay.
So you could actually drive onto campus
Mm-hmm.
and turn down between what's now the library and the Nunnally building
Mm-hmm.
and just drive in. It was a kind of a circular drive, but there were parking places
Wow.
all in there. And that was there until we changed to a four-year school.
Good gracious.
The major changes in the physical plant
Mm-hmm.
occurred the first 2 years after we made the transition.
Okay. What do you remember when you were working here? Like anything interesting personalities, like people you've met during the time you were here? Anything that you remember?
Well, in those early years, see, I came in 90, and then we made the transition to a four-year school in 08, 09, so I was here a long time before that.
Right.
There were not a lot of changes. There were not a lot of changes in the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
We had, during that time, I would say 45 to 50 full-time faculty members.
Right.
Kind of, varied a little bit. Whereas now you have 100 to 105 probably full-time,
Wow.
and then lots of part-time. The other big thing that's very different now is we were one of four colleges in the university system that had technical programs.
Oh, wow.
And so, what does that mean? It really meant we were in the university system, but we also worked at that time it was called the Department of Technical and Adult Ed. Now it's called the Technical College System of Georgia, the Coastal Pines of type schools.
Right.
So we had, and I managed all of those programs starting in about 96. We had auto repair. We had manufacturing, machining, welding, drafting. And then we had 2-year programs in business and office technology, computers. So all of those programs were considered technical programs, as was the LPN and the Surge Tech programs, because they were not you didn't get an associate degree.
Right.
You got a diploma or a certificate.
Mm-hmm.
It was considered completion, but
Right.
but it wasn't a degree.
Mm.
And so in 08, 09, because of the change, the university system said you will become a four-year institution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a part of that,
Mm-hmm.
we needed to transition those programs to one of the technical colleges. So we spent a year working with the technical college system to make sure that any student who had taken their technical courses here
Mm-hmm.
were going to be able to transfer all of them to the technical college system. Because while we did similar things, because we were a part of the university system was our kind of ultimate boss.
Right.
We might not be able to call the course the same thing they called it over in the technical colleges. So we had a lot, because we transitioned about 500 plus students out of this college
Mm-hmm.
to the technical college at the end of that year.
Wow.
So it was a huge project to undertake.
I'm sure.
We also transitioned about 9 faculty members that were dedicated to those classes. A lot of, I wouldn't call it unrest, but a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, because a lot of those faculty members had been here for many, many years, and they really didn't want to go anywhere else.
Who
But,
could blame them?
well, the university system operates very differently from the technical college system. Like our faculty members, and same thing you see now, if you just show up at Dr. Montford's door, he may not be there.
Right.
Right.
He has office hours and so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the way we all work, because you're kind of independent. You're in a system, but you're very much responsible for your own, for everything you do. Well, in the technical college system, they have to be on campus 40 hours a week.
Wow.
So needless to say, you can imagine those faculty members weren't excited about losing their independence.
I'm sure.
From kind of coming and going to having to stay on campus. So that was an anxious time. I think the other thing that's important for you guys to know is the faculty and staff on campus, and at that time we were Coastal Georgia Community College. We did not know the change was coming until it was announced to the public.
Wow.
So, again, there was unhappiness, anxiety, frustration. While in your logical mind, you knew it was a good thing, it was going to change your life, literally, as with those faculty who had to leave. And so there was not, on the front end, not a lot of happiness about it.
Right.
And there were a few people who just left on their own, that they just couldn't make the adjustment. But those of us who saw the bigger picture, we saw good things for those technical students, because they were going to a college that was dedicated, literally everything, to the technical focus. And then we saw the opportunities for Coastal to grow and become, what it is today after
Right.
10 years.
That's wild. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was
Imagine.
yesterday.
Yeah, yes.
Let's see. How, like you were talking about the faculty and stuff, like how the faculty when you were here on campus, and was like any other constructions that were going on like after you left, or like things that you've seen here that you're like, wow. I think when you're coming back here.
Well, I retired in 15.
Mm-hmm.
Then I came back in 17 and worked till this past October. So there's, other than the library renovation that's occurring now, there hasn't been any new buildings since I left.
Right.
The big changes in all of these buildings, they were old. I mean, they were here when I came in 90. The college opened in 61, I think. And so they were old, and very little had been done to them. Most all the walls were concrete block, even inside.
Right.
And so when Dr. Hepburn became president, she was our initial 4-year college president. We embarked on that, becoming more like a 4-year college, not only in our thought process and the offerings for students, but in our physical plant as well. So one by one, we have remodeled all of these buildings to what you guys are seeing today. And then the Nunley building was the first building that was built after we transitioned. I think we opened it in 11, I believe. And then the Student Center. I think the Student Center and first dorm was kind of all occurring pretty close to the same time.
Right.
Because one of the things, if you truly want to be a 4-year school, you have to do the things 4-year colleges and universities do. Well, they have housing on campus.
Right.
And again, that also helps promote the activities, because if I'm on campus, I might have a car, but still, if there's going to be a fun event tonight, well, I'm on campus, so I'll go and participate in that. So, but you have to grow those things. They didn't all occur instantly.
Right.
And then, so the dorm, you had Nunley, and then kind of the dorm and student center, and then the beginning of these renovations, because all the technical programs had been in what you know as the SAC. Well, what was down there was welding equipment and machining equipment. It was like a garage of sorts.
Right.
And so all of that had to be gutted, essentially, to what you're seeing as the things that are now in the SAC. And then, just as time goes, like financial aid would be in one place, and then we would move it to another place to just better meet the needs of the changing college. When nursing and a lot of the science people, when the Nunley building opened, then it gave us more opportunities to renovate these other ones and turn them into something different from what they had been. So hence, this is primarily social science, and business the office is particularly located in this building. And then Jones is a combination of things. Oh, and then I forgot about the Corral building. That was also built after. Nunley was first, then the Student Center and the first dorm, then Corral, and then the second dorm, I think was the last building.
Right.
But that's a lot of new buildings.
Absolutely. Just growing like a weed.
Yeah. Well, if you go, we had about 1,700 students. Okay, you move 500 or so over to the technical college system, and then what they expect of you as a 4-year college is growth. So and I'm not going to try to quote numbers because I wouldn't be real accurate, but we really never saw a huge drop in enrollment, even though we moved those 500 students, because there were a lot of students in the community who had their associate degrees and wanted to continue as a bachelor's student, but couldn't. They were what we call landlocked. They couldn't go away to school. Most of them were adults. And so when we started, our first 3 programs were nursing, business, and education. A lot of people returned to school that had been kind of waiting and wishing they could and that sort of thing. And so our enrollment varied very little from the time we transitioned that group out to bringing in our first juniors as a 4-year college.
All right. During this time, we're going to switch I'm going to be recording,
Okay.
and he's going to start asking you questions now.
Okay.
So we're switch seats. I'll just
We don't
do
have to
that.
switch seats on.
You want to just
That'll work.
it's over there.
Alright, so then,
Well, I
I'm
think we
here.
got to switch seats because we got the cameras right there.
oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we just got to switch right quick. All right.
Alright, I'm just going to state for the camera, I'm Jacob Wright, and I'm going to continue Miss Hampton's interview. Alright. Go ahead and figure out. So you didn't ask any of these questions on the back?
No.
Okay. Alright. Miss Hampton, I'm going to start with this question here. How has the college embraced like new technologies over the years? Has there been a lot of advancement in the ways, like when you started teaching, has there been a lot of new equipment brought in, you know, in the time that you spent here?
Yes. When I first started, we had desktops.
Right.
There were very few laptops, so the individual had to be kind of a computer oriented person to have a laptop.
Right.
And then over time, and we had desktops in our offices.
Mm-hmm.
There were 1 or 2 computer labs where we taught computer courses, and that was about it. Maybe a few in the library.
Okay.
But the students in the library still at that time went looking for books, not looking things up online.
Right.
So there was some of that, but not very much. And so now what you see now is a complete change. You rarely go there looking for a book unless it's something probably really old.
Right.
You history students might do that, but
Occasionally.
but mostly you're doing it through online research. And now everybody has a laptop.
Right.
Students as well. There was no Wi-Fi on campus in the early 90s.
Wow.
And so you have tablets, you have laptops, so do all the faculty, and so major change related to
So with
computers.
the advent of all that new technology, did it kind of change the way you taught classes over the years as well?
Yes. You used a lot more technology in the classroom, and now I didn't teach. I stopped teaching in the late 90s and became a full-time administrator.
Right.
So I wasn't in the classroom as much, but even before I left the classroom, we were bringing things on the computer in and putting them on the screen. PowerPoint was getting going, and but Prezi and all these things you see today, all the interactive things you can do, there was none of that in the beginning. The only thing we did early on, there was a program called SAMS.
Oh, wow.
And it was actually created to be used with medical students on one campus versus another. But we taught students in Savannah here. I mean, they were in Savannah, and we were here. It was before FaceTime.
Isn't that something?
But we had the technologies now. They were big and bulky, and you had to have somebody moving the camera around and all those kinds of things. But they could see us, we could see them, and it was a live class.
Wow.
So that was back in the mid-90s where we started that. And then now you've got all online and hybrid, and yes, it's changed the way all teaching is done.
I'm sure. It sounds like it. Oh, let's see. So you were around, I'm assuming, for all the various name changes that have been on campus and everything?
Yes.
Gotcha.
It was Brunswick Junior College, then Brunswick College, and then in '96, we became Coastal Georgia Community College. Because the president at that time felt that because we had technical programs and pure academic programs, that we were a community college. Georgia doesn't have community colleges.
Right.
That's not the way our system is set up. But they've done away with most of them now, but Florida was just full of community colleges.
Right.
And so because of our mission at that time, she thought that, so we went from Coastal Georgia Community College to the College of Coastal Georgia when we made the 4-year transition.
So would you say that the overall public reaction for the 4-year transition was a good one?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's Coastal Pines now, but at the time of the transition, it was Altamaha Technical College out of Jessup. But the Career Academy, the Golden Isles Career Academy, had been built, and so right away, Altamaha used some of their space so that our previous students could stay here. And so the public in general didn't see us losing anything,
right,
but saw us being able to do more. And apparently, I didn't know this for a long time, in the early 80s, they did a study that recommended at that time that Coastal become a 4-year college. And I don't know how the politics went, but that never occurred.
right,
And then in the early 2000s, I guess, in the 2000s, they had a study done again, and I guess the theory behind the university system is they don't think students should have to go more than about 60 miles to get to a 4-year school.
right,
And the only one remotely close to us was Savannah Armstrong, because it's further than that to Valdosta, and of course there's nothing east.
right,
And so at that time we had a regent, the Board of Regents, and you have representatives from all over the state on the Board of Regents. And so our region happened at that time to have Mr. Jim Bishop, who was a regent. Well, he got in there and really worked for the 4-year, going to 4 years. And then there were a lot of people, I hate to say political, but it's people in public office, the chamber and economic development and all that were very supportive. And so the public did not, they were very happy about moving to 4 years. Because it gives, again, it gave that initial group of students that were landlocked an opportunity, but then that wasn't our only focus. We wanted to start drawing students from all over the state and nation for that matter, and of course you're seeing that occurring now. We have international students and of course mostly still Georgia and mostly still this area. But as you expand, then that gives students more opportunity, give students more opportunity and exposure to someone other than just what they knew, like my little hometown. That's all I knew until I moved away from there. And so the exposure really expands our thought processes, even though sometimes we might not want to do that.
Absolutely. Let's see. I'm trying to weed through the questions that have already kind of been answered and stuff here. Let's see. So you did mention previously about the sports teams being around when you arrived here at the college. Did you ever attend any early games? You remember what it was like to be on campus for things like that, or?
Well, you attend a basketball game, and nothing like the enthusiasm that's there now.
Right.
And of course we didn't have volleyball. It was interesting when volleyball started. It seemed to have really brought the student pop, even though it's all girls volleyball.
Right.
But so that people went to the basketball games, but again, you had commuting students.
Yeah.
And so, unless they were true basketball fans, now, and that would mostly probably be guys if you think about it. So then you move into something that you got more students on campus, we get in a conference,
Mm-hmm.
you get a lot more publicity. I have to admit, I never went to a softball game. I did go to a few basketball games. But after I was here 10 years after we made the change, and the student participation in the volleyball and basketball games increased tremendously. You know, the announcing increased. We changed the look of the gym to be a coastal Georgia gym. And like I was just reading where our golf team was selected as number 1 in the NAIA. That all helps students to get more enthused about the activities on campus. Now, you know, golf you don't get many spectators because they're here, there, and yonder. And not as much in tennis as far as watching. But, oh yeah, the sports have changed. And when we were developing the business program, we talked a lot with consultants because no one here at that time was a 4-year oriented faculty member.
Right.
And this one man that we talked to said, of course you're talking about growth and what's needed, what's needed in a business program. What do you want to focus on? But one of the things he told us was that when Georgia Southern started football, which was a long time now, but they didn't have it years ago, is when their enrollment shot up. When they started football. So any kind of sport is going to help. I'm not at the level, obviously, in the South for football, but it.
Oh, gotcha. Alrighty. Just over your time here at Coastal, I know we've talked about the development of the programs, and obviously we just talked about the sports teams and the buildings or anything. Do you have any personal stories that just are really good memories that you had while you were teaching and being an administrator here? Or?
Well, the development of programs, in the 10 years, we have currently now 19 baccalaureate programs.
Right.
That is a lot to have been developed in 10 years.
Absolutely.
Because the development of those programs takes a phenomenal amount of work from the faculty and the administrative people, and then it has to go to the state, and then you got can you afford it? What has to be purchased before you can start the program or with starting the program? And so those changes were and still are both exciting and frustrating because of the amount of work that you have to do. And you may develop what we think is a really good program, and it may go up to the system office in Atlanta and sit for a year or two. Because they may not think that it's the right program for the right time kind of thing. And of course, they're looking out for the whole state, and do the colleges close to you have that same program? All of those kinds of things have to be worked into it. But the changes in the presidents is always kind of exciting and scary because you don't really know what's going to happen or what that person's focus or interest really is. But I think we've stayed really close to our mission of being affordable, regional, but yet progressive.
Of course.
But really frustrating? No, because I loved being here. So I didn't find things frustrating. Now, there are people who had some frustrations because maybe they got shifted from this area to this area over here. The biggest frustration was when all these buildings were being renovated, everybody had to move their offices at least twice.
Right.
You had to move out of this building to a temporary building, and then you moved, but you might not have come back in this building. By that time, you might have gone to another building. So that's always frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure.
What, change is difficult, even good change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, you have to just think, okay, this is progress. Sometimes we would say this too will pass and we'll move on. But having had so many different positions out here.
Mm-hmm.
Change didn't bother me as much.
Right.
And so when I moved over into the administration building, I became I'm sure you guys know what a utility player is on a baseball team.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to do it all, kind of.
Can play almost every position.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I got labeled as that person by the president because anytime someone left
Mm-hmm.
or was out, maybe sick or something for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
I got put in as the interim whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
And so the joke with the faculty now is, what's going to be your next interim position? Because then I did come back as the interim provost for 15 months.
Wow. I got you. Were there any, with being the interim provost, what does that kind of entail?
Well, you're responsible for all things academic.
Right.
You also, in that position, the registrar answers to you, the service learning people, the tutoring. So anything that has anything to do with academics, whether it's not just the programs, it's a huge job.
I'm sure.
You can, and then you have, obviously you have deans and directors and all. So your responsibility is to manage those folks so they can manage their areas.
Okay.
Big challenges usually was resources. Faculty always think we need more faculty, and we do, so they get real frustrated having to use too many part-time faculty.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with part-time faculty, but when you're trying to grow a college with 4-year programs, you want stability and a team of faculty focused on that particular program. So those things are always real challenging.
Right.
And then then we had a SACS visit, which is the College Accrediting Agency. That's about a 3-year project.
Oh, my.
Because you have to look internally at yourself about everything so that we can ensure students are getting a quality education.
Right.
So our and a lot of personnel changes. That's hard.
Right.
Because I do things one way, but you come in after me and you do them another and then another. That creates a little bit of uneasiness in whichever ones of our employees are, in that situation. So those things are really challenging.
I'm sure. Just with, the transition from being comfortable with one person to another, it brings its own challenges anyway.
Sure. Every semester, if you start with a professor you haven't had before, it's like, okay, how is he or she going to test? And, what are they going to expect?
I got you. Well, you said you've been you've been, I guess, you haven't been doing anything at the college since 2017 or 18?
October of 18.
October of 18. Have you been engaging in anything since you've left CCGA?
I'm on the board of trustees for the foundation.
Okay.
And that's the entity that supports students. Most of our scholarships come from the foundation. So I do that, and then I come to various speakers and things. This college is really special to me. I had two great careers, one in practicing nursing and one in nursing education, and then higher education in general. And so this college will always be really special. I saw it totally change.
Right.
And now I think it has huge potential in the coming years. Will it be a University of Georgia? No, that's not the goal.
Right.
But we want it to grow so that students who need the smaller school environment will have opportunities, and it's good for the community. It's going to help.
Yeah.
It helps draw people into the community. When businesses or industries are looking to not necessarily relocate, but relocate or start a new,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first things they want to know about is an educated workforce.
Right. Definitely.
And so, I mean, I think we're a key partner in the community as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any particular steps that you would like to see the college take in the future?
I think just continue to expand our programs, particularly where there is interest. One of the biggest kind of complaints, I guess, that I hear from students and sometimes people out in the public is they don't offer the program I wanted or I want. And so I think the more of that we can do, the more we'll grow our enrollment. If I want a 4-year degree in art, then I can't come to Coastal. So it's that kind of thing.
Right.
I think just keep growing and making ourselves integral parts of the community.
Right. It certainly seems like we're well on our way. All right. And to go ahead and wrap this interview up, Ms. Hampton, do you have any other memories of CCGA, the students, the community, or anything about it in general you'd like to share?
Let me think just a minute.
You take your time.
Well, some of the interesting things that, did you know we had a pool on campus?
I had no idea.
Yeah, we did. My mom came here. When she came here, they had a pool here.
Yeah, it's where the fitness, I think it's where the
Yeah,
fitness
it
area
used to
is
be,
now.
yeah.
They filled it in.
Oh, wow.
But because we were on the coast, actually you could take swimming as a PE class.
Right.
And when I first came here, no, right before I came, they stopped it, but every student had to take swimming.
Wow.
It was required.
That's a good thing
And
to
then-
ensure
and
people
then
won't get
it-
out there and not swim.
Let's see, it went away, but early on, you had to take 6 credit hours of PE.
Wow. That's more than they have to take now.
Yeah. We have the president who was here when the announcement came about changing to 4 years, had been here 17 years. And she retired.
Right.
And then Dr. Hepburn came in, and that was like a night and day change.
Right.
And at the same time, you're trying to become a 4-year school, and so the standard thing those first 4 or 5 years were that we were flying the plane while we were building it, because that's sort of the way we,
Right.
the way we felt about the pace. You know how the little gerbils run around on the Ferris wheel looking thing? That's sort of how we all felt, that we were just running as fast as we could, but not fast enough.
I'm sure.
But it's, I think there are great opportunities here. I was in a meeting over the past couple of weeks for several days, and I heard 3 specific compliments from the group that I was with about Coastal.
Right.
One is one of our graduates is now doing apparently very well with the Boy Scouts, and he's young. He hasn't been out of school more than probably 4 years.
Right.
The nursing program and our new exercise science program were both recognized for partnerships with out in the community. In other
Right.
words, a nonprofit needs to have their students, have their kids checked out before they start playing soccer or whatever it is.
Right.
We're doing some of that, and then the exercise science was helping. It was oriented to nutrition, but it was helping students see their body mass and whatever and where it should be, and how nutrition can make a. But these were unsolicited positive comments about about the students out here and what they're doing. So I think the partnership with the community is really, really good. And I think Dr. Johnston is going to continue to move us forward.
Mm-hmm.
She has to have time to get adjusted
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, and a lot of the president's job is out in the community,
Mm-hmm.
raising money, you hope. And then, of course, Dr. Evans, your provost, has
Right.
only been here since January, so he has to have time to get adjusted as well, but I think there'll be a good partnership, and that they are very committed to this school.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, I think that about sums it up, Ms.
Okay.
Hampton. We
That's
appreciate your time, and thank you for stopping by and hanging
Yeah.
out with us a while.
Just ask you for one thing. It's for you had
Yeah,
to cut
you-
that off. For